Welcome back to another episode of The Install with Greg Cosell of NFL Films. Rookie minicamp, Greg, here in Nashville in the books. OTA's right around the corner and really starting to feel like football season again. I know you've just gotten, I saw you were giving out book reviews on Twitter, so I know you're getting at least a little bit of time before this thing kicks back up.
Yeah, well, I've gotten to know actually Don Winslow pretty well. And I don't know how that occurred, but he was one of my favorite authors going back years and years and years. And all of a sudden he started sending me books, and he sent me City on Fire, which is the first in a trilogy that he's doing. And I had just read it. And I actually reached out to him and said, hey, I really enjoyed it. And he said, hey, would you mind tweeting that out? And I said, no, of course not. So no, but in the off season, I love to read novels. The most I've ever read, of course, was the pandemic off season because there was nothing else to do. I think I read 50 books that off season from probably early February to mid-August.
Yeah,
I don't get to 50 in a normal, off season, but I get to 35 or so.
Man, that's one of the things that I've rediscovered. I used to love to read, and really pandemic was right around after I did the Last Dance, the Michael Jordan thing, and I dipped my toe into the Tiger King stuff, but I couldn't stick with it. I started to read again, and it's become one of the most therapeutic or relaxing things that I can do with my time in the off. I'm
not a sit around person, but I can sit around and read. That's when I can sit around. Other than that, I can't just sit around. Like I can't just sit and watch TV. That's not my thing. But reading, I really like to read novels.
Yeah, no question. Maybe we'll do some book club stuff.
Yeah, there you go.
When we get further into the summer. Anyway, so we're going to talk about the two third-round picks that the Titans have, and of course, we can start with a little rookie minicamp stuff, given that that's my first opportunity to see those guys in uniform in person. But Nicholas Petit-Frere, the offensive tackle out of Ohio State, and then with the 86th pick, they got Malik Willis, who has been a bit of a talking point here in Tennessee. Greg, we talked about scouting offensive linemen. If we can start with NPF first. And the different ways that you look at pass pro and run blocking techniques. But with Nick as a third-round pick, the thing that they value a lot, and a lot of teams value in offensive linemen, is versatility, something that we've seen him do in games, switching from right to left tackle. A lot of good stuff there, a lot of good Big Ten competition, but I think some things that they still need to refine.
No question. But the one thing that you can't teach is he has pretty light, active feet. He's a good athlete. He did not have a really strong season overall. Mm-hmm. If he did, he would have been a higher pick than a third rounder because he's got desired size. He's got length. He looks the part. And I watched a lot of Ohio State, obviously, because they have so many players.
Sure.
But there are many, many snaps in which he just looks really efficient and comfortable. Kick slide, knee bend, balance, hand usage. He really looks the part. Now, he has significant experience both at right tackle, which is where he played in 2020. They moved him to left tackle this year in 2021. But there were games, as you may know, Buck, where he struggled at left tackle, and then they moved him back to right tackle. So he's just been very inconsistent in the use of his technique. Now, technique is coachable and teachable. You can teach an offensive tackle to take great sets. You can teach him how to use his hands. And I think that's something, particularly the hand usage, is something that he needs to work on. He struggled a lot because what he did is he bent at the waist a lot. And what he did is he used both hands to reach. And usually in the NFL, they do not teach that concept. They teach what they call the independent arm concept, where you use one arm really to start with your strike and your punch. You don't want to use both arms because the result of that is you tend to bend at the waist.
Yeah.
So this is all teachable and coachable. Again, it all depends on whether it works, because obviously he's been doing something a certain way for quite some time. But, as I said, the physical attributes, the athletic attributes are there.
Yeah, the three games that I had written down where it looked like he had considerable struggles were Penn State, Nebraska, and Michigan this year.
He really struggled with Arnold Ebiketie from Penn State, and of course he struggled with Aiden Hutchinson from Michigan.
Yeah, and listen, he won't be the only one who struggles with Aiden Hutchinson of Michigan as the second overall selection this year. But I'm glad that you brought up his feet first, Greg, because I went back and watched some clips of Daniel Jeremiah talking about Petit-Frere at the draft. He described them as popcorn feet, which is a first time NFL draft term that I've used, that I've heard. I don't know if that's common as a part of the language around draft analysis, but it, as you mentioned, it really shows up, and to see him be able to compensate even without proper technique, Greg, some of the things that he'll need to smooth out at the next level was the thing that kind of caught my attention most when I watched a handful of his games this past year.
Yeah, and as I said, these things are all teachable and coachable. Whether they happen, that remains to be seen, but he certainly has very good feet. One of the initial points I made in watching him was that he had light, active feet with plus athleticism and mobility. He was very comfortable in his kick slide. He had good knee bend. You always look for knee bend because you don't want to see tackles, particularly there's essentially three kinds of pass sets. They may be called different things by different people, but there's three kinds of pass sets. There's a short set on, let's say, a 3-step drop. There's a 45-degree angle set, and there's a vertical set. So on 45-degree angle and vertical pass sets, you'd like to see knee bend, you'd like to see some balance, you'd like to see a firm base, you'd like to see them have their hands in ready position to strike at the appropriate time. So those are the things you look for. And then, of course, you have to see how they react when they get counter moves. Do they have reactive athleticism and lateral movement staying on balance? Because a lot of guys you watch in college, they can look really pretty, Buck, on that initial kick slide and the initial set. But then as soon as they face some kind of quick twitch movement by a pass rusher, it falls apart.
Yeah. That's certainly something that scouts bring up on a regular basis when it comes to the offensive line group. Now, Greg, where he ends up playing here is still to be determined. Their offensive line group is still very much in flux. It seems though that right tackle is the place that makes the most sense for him, given their needs here currently and what we've kind of seen from him throughout the course of his college career.
Yeah, as I said, in 2020, he was Ohio State starting right tackle.
Right.
So he's played the position at a high level of college football with meaningful snaps. Now, keep in mind, this kid was a 5-star recruit out of Tampa. I mean, he was viewed as one of the best offensive tackle prospects in the country when he came out of high school, which, of course, is one reason why he ended up at Ohio State. So you're dealing with a kid that has athletic and physical traits. Now it's getting him to do all the detail work, the nuance work, the technique work, which, as I said, you can teach that, whether it does happen as he plays. When he lines up, let's say he ends up being the starting right tackle, and all of a sudden he's playing against a really good pass rusher, then you see if he sticks to the technique and the fundamentals, or if it breaks apart.
Yeah, the intelligence is something that I know that they think a lot of. Obviously, Vrabel's very close to the program, and just getting a chance to interact with him over the past couple of, I guess about a month and a half now since he's been drafted, that really comes across very willing and very ready to get into all the technical things that he's going to need to learn from Keith Carter and Mike Sullivan. Probably the headliner, if not Treylon Burks here in Nashville, Greg, was Malik Willis, who the NFL very much told us by his draft drop, if you want to call it that he's a project, as we've outlined throughout the course of our discussions around the quarterbacks, and something that here in Tennessee, he falls into a really good situation. Now, the first 2 days that I got the opportunity to watch him out there with their coaching staff, Greg, they're working footwork primarily and on his release. As trying to get the mechanical stuff that they look for out of quarterbacks, or that they think best fits him, starting to work with him on those basic skills at this point. What else do you expect them to work on with him as he sits behind Ryan Tannehill this year? I'm
really glad you brought that up, because I've been doing this a long time, been around a lot of coaches, talked to a lot of coaches, been to a lot of training camps and OTAs, and sometimes I feel like they don't spend enough time with the fundamentals and techniques of the quarterback position, with the assumption being that these guys, because they played usually higher level college football, they played in high school, they've been playing since they're 10 years old, that they know all this stuff. And a lot of them don't. And I just remember a very quick story. Ron Jaworski, who's a very good friend of mine, he'd been in the league 7 years. The Eagles had traded for him with Dick Vermeil as the head coach. And Dick Vermeil brought in Sid Gilman, who was viewed as the father of the modern day passing game. Yeah. And back then there was no shotgun. Everybody played under center. And Sid Gilman came to the Eagles and he started with Jaws taking the snap from under center. That's how he started. You know, don't take this stuff for granted. You need to teach quarterbacks a lot of things about fundamentals, because if you don't have proper fundamentals, more than likely you will not be a consistently accurate thrower. And you can be super smart. You can read every defense known to man, but if you can't throw the ball where you want to, you have nothing, Buck. You have nothing. You can't play. So I'm just really glad to hear that that's what they're working with him on, because he was exclusively, I would say almost 100% a shotgun quarterback in college, and he's not going to be a shotgun quarterback exclusively if he gets to play with the Titans sooner than later.
Right. I think that's what makes this so ideal, Greg, is they basically get the opportunity to build this up from the ground floor to a degree, right? Because it's not just the basic mechanics that they're going to have to work on, and now under center as opposed to in the shotgun, but basically digesting a play, calling the play to the other players, and operating the basic functions of a huddle. I mean, I think it was you that pointed out to me, Greg, that if you watch them on film, you're looking at the wide receivers, you're looking at the offensive line and the quarterback, and they're all looking to their left at the sideline because they're getting the play call. And then
and by the way, you brought up another great point there, Buck. A lot of these guys have never called plays in a huddle. Okay. A lot of these guys have never done a cadence at the line of scrimmage, right? Because when you watch college football, what do you see when quarterbacks go to the line of scrimmage? They stand there and they do the clap thing. Mm-hmm. They don't cadence at the line of scrimmage. Again, something you have to be taught if you've never done it. But my guess is, okay, because I've seen this in other training camps.
Sure.
That Mike Vrabel and Mike Vrabel, Downing, Kelly, that they're all telling Willis when he's calling the play in the huddle, because this is new to him, to call it like you believe it.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I guarantee, because I've heard that 1,000 times, because you can't just go in the huddle and go red, right, 42. You got to call it like this is the best play we could possibly run at this moment in time. You got to call it like you believe it. And I guarantee, that someone, Vrabel, Kelly, Downing, was saying that exact thing when they were talking to Malik Willis.
They're Greg, they literally have Vrabel mic'd up for sound at rookie minicamp, and he's saying those exact lines to Malik Willis.
Yeah, I didn't see that, but I've seen it too many times, so I know that.
Yeah, no, and it's why I'm so fascinated to see how this goes, right, Greg? Because we've talked plenty about Ryan Tannehill, and recency bias is one thing, and the playoff game is, of course, has massive implications, and puts a lot of pressure on the starter. But the best possible thing for Malik Willis and his future potentially as a Titan starting quarterback is for Ryan Tannehill to play well, so that they can get this time necessary to give Malik Willis the tools that he needs to succeed at this level.
Without question. And because there's too much at this point that he's never done. And again, I don't want people to think that I'm saying he's not capable of doing it. That's not.
But Greg, the league just told everybody, right? The league
just told everybody. Right. Because think of it this way. What has everybody been saying for the last couple of years, Buck? That, because, you want runaround quarterbacks, that Malik Willis, he can make special plays. He's a second reaction great player, and that's what you want now. Well, apparently the league decided, even though he can do those things very, very well at a high level, that wasn't good enough to make him either a first-round pick or a second-round pick.
Right.
So all the other issues that were potentially problematic as far as the league were concerned were big enough issues that made him a third-round pick. And by the way, the Titans traded up to get him in the third round. Who knows what would have happened if they didn't trade up?
Yeah, well, I mean, for Robinson, he just felt it was too good of an opportunity for them to pass up on a player like that where they had him rated on their board. And, we've heard general managers before say, well, that was the top rated player left on our board. And maybe it's true and maybe it's not. We have no idea because we don't know what their draft boards look
Of course
like.
is. Yeah.
But it's certainly something that to watch that take place on a fundamental level, because Mike Vrabel's not had to do that. They had Marcus Mariota and brought Ryan Tannehill in thereafter. And sure, they've had some, 6th and 7th round guys in Luke Falk or Cole McDonald's of the world that some of them didn't make it even through training camp. This is a unique situation, and really the first time that this staff, while at Tennessee, has had to go through this process.
Well, he was drafted to be their quarterback down the road. Whatever down the road means, that will depend on Ryan Tannehill. If Tannehill has a phenomenal year and they get to the AFC Championship, something along those lines, then it'd be hard just to get rid of Ryan Tannehill and say, see you later. But if for whatever reason the offense struggles, and by the way, it may struggle because there's going to be other issues that need to be figured out. The O-line is a potential issue. We don't know how that's going to play out. Now, when I say an issue, I don't mean that it's going to stink. It just means there's questions that have to be answered. And whether they get answered, that remains to be seen. We don't know that.
Right.
Obviously they're working in some new receivers as well. They drafted Treylon Burks, Robert Woods, as great as he is, and I love Robert Woods. He's still new to this team. We'll see who their slot guy is. I love Kyle Phillips, but he's still a rookie. Yeah. So there's many questions here that hopefully get answered in the affirmative, but we don't know that as we speak here in May.
Yeah, it's minimum 5 new offensive starters for the Tennessee Titans this year. It will be there will be some growing pains for everybody involved. Greg, we appreciate the time as always. I know you got some travels upcoming. For people who just need to know about our taping schedule, we're going to release next week's pod early on a Monday to accommodate Greg for some engagements that he has before this football season gets officially underway. So we'll get the people some 4th round conversations about Hassan Haskins, the running back, and anything else that comes of the news cycle, because we know the NFL never stops. Appreciate it, buddy.
No, that's true.
See you, Greg.